My name is Mason Cole. I'm 59 years old. And 3 weeks ago, a man in a gray suit slid a plain folder across a diner table and changed my life. It wasn't a handshake from a venture fund or a headline from a tech blog. It was a buyout. Quiet, tidy, final, for a little heat-saving ring I designed on my bench after midnight, back when the shop was cold and the rent was hot. The number on the page could have bought my street twice. I stared at it while the coffee went cold and made one decision as steady as steel. No one in my family would know. Not my son, not my daughter, not my brother who only calls when the calendar turns more than his conscience. In my family, money isn't love, it's leverage. I wanted to see who we were without it. Before I touched a single dollar, I decided to test them. I grew up in a garage that smelled like cutting oil and burnt toast. My father's shop was called Cole Precision, before precision was a word people put on coffee. He taught me to measure twice and talk half as much. When he died, there was no will, just a drawer of wrenches sorted by feel. I took the shop. My brother Ray took the opinion that he deserved it. Lydia married me anyway. She was a florist who turned the roughest room into morning. When she got sick, I built her a wooden box for the invoices so she'd never see the late stamps. She laughed at me for that, then cried anyway. I learned back then that silence can be a kind of tenderness. After she died, silence stayed because I didn't know how to chase it away. Tyler, my son, got his business degree and a taste for suits that didn't look good with grease. He liked to stand in the shop with his hands behind his back, like he could run a lathe by pointing at it. My daughter June teaches art to second graders. She once painted the shop door blue and said it looked like a bruise healing. Ray drifted through every title a man can have without earning: consultant, partner, acting manager, like they were jackets he could hang back up when they got dirty. The ring I made wasn't magic. Thin copper, a lip, a ridge, a curve that kept heat where it worked instead of letting it wander away. The right person saw it. Then the gray suit called. He said words like licensing and global. I said words like, I need to think. He slid the folder. I read the number once and put it away like a loaded tool. I found a lawyer who didn't smile too much. Her name was Rivera. She listened while I told her about the shop, the ring, my family. She didn't tell me I was paranoid when I asked about keeping my name off everything. You want to trust, she said, and you want to write everything down as if you'll someday doubt yourself. She told me to keep messages, save voicemails, forward emails to a folder called Proof. Not for court, she said, for your own spine. I went home and held Lydia's coffee mug with both hands until it stopped shaking. Then I put the folder in a drawer under her old seed catalogs and breathed like a man about to go under the water on purpose. I started with Tyler. I could hear him before I called. He lives in Speed. When he answered, he sounded like he was late for something that mattered more than me. Dad, make it quick. I've got a pitch in 10. It won't take 10, I said. A supplier welched and a job went sideways. I'm short. 7,000 would keep payroll clean. He let out a sound that was almost a laugh. Dad, 7K isn't nothing. Why didn't you call me sooner about controls? You always run this place like it's 1988. You can't just plug holes. I'm calling now, I said. Can you help? He sighed. Look, don't throw good money after bad. Transfer your majority to me, and I'll refinance. It's cleaner on paper. I'll take on the risk, your risk, I said. Our future, he said, and pronounced the word like a brand. I'll send a draft. You just sign. We can't have you drowning the thing you love. I'll think about it, You always do, he said, and ended the call before the silence could. I saved the voicemail he left the next day. Dad, just circling back on the share transfer. If you drag your feet, the bank will make this messy. Let me be the bad guy with them, not you. Sign, I called June that night. She picked up like she'd been waiting, even if she hadn't. Hey, Dad. Hey, Junebug. How's the shop? Like a boot that leaks. Oh. I heard dishes, water, a life. What do you need? 7 would steady me, I said, and hated that I'd learned to say it like a number, not a plea. She was quiet so long I thought we'd lost connection. Evan's been out of work since the layoff, she said softly. We're behind on the car, and the twins have the field trip to DC next month. I can sell some things. I can come by nights and do invoices. I can bring food. I can't do 7, your voice is enough, I said. Don't say that to make me feel better, she answered. Let me do what I can. She did what she could the next day. She came with soup and sat on a stool while I sorted bolts into coffee cans. She cried into a rag when she thought I wasn't looking, then made me laugh on purpose. I wrote in a notebook, June, no money, real love. Ray didn't need a call. He heard short through the family grapevine that never dries up. He arrived at the shop at lunch with a cigar he didn't light. We've been too sentimental about this place, Va said, looking around like a realtor. You're tired, Mace. Let me take the weight. I'll buy your majority now, cash, so you can breathe. You can keep your name on the door. Hell, we'll call you Founder Emeritus. How much? I asked, and he gave me a number that wouldn't have bought my machines, let alone my name. Market realities, he said when I laughed. Come on! You'll die at that bench. I walked him to the door. I've died at worse places, I said, and his smile showed too many teeth. After those 3, I could have stopped, but I kept going because it's hard to look away from a fire once you've smelled the smoke. Cousin Mike called to say he'd get me on the prayer chain. An old neighbor texted a link to a loan shark he swore was honest. The only man who showed up without asking for anything was Hank, who ran my mill when he was 20 and now ran his life with 2 replaced knees. I heard, he said simply, setting a brown bag on my bench. My wife baked. You're not a man who asks. I'm not a man who waits to be asked. I wrote down his name, too, then put the notebook away because the pages were starting to look like headstones. I kept the shop running on spit and stubbornness. The ring orders were already moving through a different building and a different bank account I never had to see. And the buyout clock ticked somewhere I couldn't hear. I thought I could float quiet into the handover. Then Roy from purchasing mentioned in the break room that he'd seen a fancy car out front last week. A man in a gray suit walking my floor like it was his. You selling us, boss? He joked, and the word selling hung like a bad smell. By Friday, Tyler called again, voice bright with false mercy. Dad, I've talked to a couple folks. We can restructure quickly if you sign. You're not 25. You shouldn't be on the hook for payroll. I'll protect you. What's in it for you? I asked. What's in it for us? He corrected. Ray showed up that afternoon with printed pages. They were neat, accurate, and crooked. Power of attorney for day-to-day, he said, tapping the signature lines. Simplifies everything. It's a formality. June asked if she could bring the kids Saturday to paint the scrap bin because the gray made her sad. I told her yes. That night I took Lydia's ring off my neck and put it in my palm. I said out loud to an empty room, "Tell me to be brave," and the room did not answer. so I told myself. Miss Rivera called the next morning. "Funds will post next week," she said. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. If you choose to give one, give it once." "What if I gave it never?" I asked. "Then you live quieter," she said. "But people will still tell a story about you. You get to decide whether it's yours." I set a meeting for Monday at 7 in the evening, when the machines were cool and the parking lot could hold all the cars belonging to people who didn't show up at dawn. I told Tyler and Ray to be there. I told June, too. I told Hank just because I wanted one pair of eyes in the room that had seen me bleed and decided to stay. I cleaned the floor with my own hands. I wiped fingerprints off the drill press. I set a folding table in front of the whiteboard and taped 3 envelopes to the top, each with a name written in a blunt pencil. Tyler. Ray. June. The 4th envelope stayed in my pocket. The 4th envelope weighed more than paper. They wandered in like actors unsure of their lines. Tyler wore a tie to a shop, which is a way of saying you don't remember what can catch you by the throat. Ray wore confidence like a cologne. June wore a sweatshirt with paint on the hem. "What's this about?" Tyler asked, looking at the envelopes like they were grades. "It's about the thing you all love most," I said. "This place. Me. And the truth that keeps them both from breaking," so Ray laughed. "You always did get dramatic when you were out of cash." I looked at him, then picked up the envelope with his name and slid out a stack of papers. "I'll read this part," I said. "You can study it later." I read his offer, the number that wasn't dignity, and his text. "Just sign. I'll keep the wolves off your porch. You'll still get to sit in your chair." I picked up Tyler's envelope. I read his voicemail about signing the shares, his email where he'd CC'd a banker and called me resistant to modern oversight, and his message to June that she had forwarded to me by accident. "I'm taking the wheel. Dad's going to crash what's left." Tyler flinched. "That wasn't for—" "It was for someone," I said. "Words are always for someone, even when you whisper." I opened June's envelope last. Inside was a recipe card in her handwriting and a bus ticket stub from years ago, when she'd ridden all night to sit with her mother in the hospital. She looked at the table like she'd failed an exam she didn't study for. "I didn't—" "You did," I said gently. "You came. You always come, even when you don't bring money." Tyler shoved his envelope back at me. "You called us here to shame us? You want a check? Fine. I'll write one. You had your chance to write one when I asked," I said. "This isn't about 7,000. It's about the price you put on someone when you think they can't pay you back." Ray spread his hands. "So what now? You read our sins, and then do what? Lose the shop out of spite?" I reached into my pocket and took out the 4th envelope. I didn't put it on the table. I held it like men hold fragile things they built with their own hands. 3 weeks ago," I said softly, "a company bought something I made. They paid me enough to leave this building and never look back. I didn't tell you because I wanted to see your faces when you thought I was sinking. Then I wanted to see your faces when you thought I was rising. I've seen both now." Tyler's mouth fell open. Ray's eyes sharpened, the way a man's do when he sees the shape of a dollar through thin cloth. June covered her mouth with both hands. "You're lying," Ray said. "Then you don't need to worry," I answered. "If I'm lying, nothing changes." I set the envelope down and slid it toward the edge of the table where no one could reach it but me. I asked myself what money should do in a family that treats it like leverage. I decided it should do something that can't be turned into a chain. Tyler's voice came tight. Dad, if this is true, if you made a deal, it belongs in the family. We can scale the shop, buy new equipment, expand. With my leadership, we could. Your leadership has been talking about the work longer than the work's been waiting, I said. You don't know what a new machine smells like. You only know its price tag. Ray stepped closer. You can't just decide without us. I've been deciding without you since I was 18, I said. You just thought you were steering because you talk louder. For a long minute, no one spoke. The machines ticked as they cooled. Outside, the security light hummed. I could feel Lydia in the doorway she always leaned on, watching me make the choice that would cost me people and give me back myself. I'm selling the shop, I said, and heard June's little gasp, the one she made when a child dropped a clay mug. But not to either of you. Who then? Tyler demanded. To them, I said, and pointed at Roy, at Maria by the press, at Hank with his careful hands, at the crew who had come in after hours because I asked them to. To everyone who kept it alive while you two hovered over it like it was a cake you were saving for yourselves. We'll set up a co-op. Papers are ready. The ring money doesn't need this place to eat. The people do. You're insane, Tyler said hoarsely. They'll run it into the ground. They've been running it while you've been writing memos, I said. If it goes under, at least it will go under honest. Ray swore. You can't cut your own blood out. I stepped closer until I could see the red in his eyes. Blood is not a credit score, I said. You had a chance to be my brother instead of my banker. June cried then, messy and real. Dad, she whispered. I'm sorry for the times I tried to be practical instead of kind. You were kind, I said. You didn't have 7. You gave me something I can't put in an envelope. Tyler snorted. What about me? I gave you a way out. You gave me a way under you, I said. He looked at the 4th envelope like it was oxygen. So what? What happens to the money? I met with Rivera this morning, I said. There's a trust. There's a fund in Lydia's name for scholarships at the vocational school and for little kids who want paint and paper but can't ask. There's a check for Hank's wife's surgery because the world is slow to bless men who don't ask for blessings. There's something for the crew when the deal closes. There's nothing for you, Tyler. Nothing for you, Ray. You're cutting us out, Tyler said, stunned. I'm cutting the rope that's been around my neck, I said. You can call it anything you want when you tell the story your way later. Ray laughed once, ugly. You'll regret this. I regret plenty, I said. I regret not hearing Lydia when she said I was allowed to want a life that didn't require me to be useful to you. I regret teaching you both that I look best on my knees. June stepped between us, palms out. Stop, she said to her brother and uncle. He's done. He owes us nothing. When they left, they didn't slam the door. That would have been honest anger. They closed it the way people close doors they're planning to open again with a key they don't yet have. The crew stayed. Hank's voice was sandpaper and honey. Boss, Mason, are you sure? No, I said, and laughed once because it was the truest thing in the room. But I know what I can't do anymore. I can't keep paying for people to measure my heart in invoices. We signed the first papers that night. My hand didn't shake. When the last pen lifted, I looked around the floor and saw the shop for what it had always been to me when I wasn't trying to make it be everything to everyone. A place where metal learns to obey heat, where a human hand can make something honest out of stubborn material. I locked the fourth envelope in my desk and walked outside into air that smelled like rain and cut grass. June sat on the step. She leaned her head on my shoulder the way she did when she was small, and for a long time we said nothing. A silence that didn't press, a silence that let two people breathe in the same rhythm. "You'll miss it," she said finally. "I'll miss the part that didn't lie," I answered. "The rest can go." "What will you do now?" "Live," I said. "Maybe sleep in. Maybe take your class and make a bowl that doesn't hold water. Maybe sit with the boys at the vocational school and tell them to measure twice and ignore anyone who calls their hands dirty." She laughed. Then she cried again. But the tears were different. Not grief, relief letting itself out. The buyout wired a week later. Rivera called to say it was done. I didn't open my banking app. I didn't need to see zeros to believe the shape of my life had changed. I took a check to the school and asked for the bursar. I wrote Lydia's name carefully and told them I wanted kids who didn't look like donors to feel like somebody had bet on them. Tyler sent me emails that toggled between anger and apology. Ray sent nothing, which for him was a volcanic act of restraint. June sent photos of the scrap bin painted with clouds the twins had put on there with their fingers. The night before the crew's official first day as owners, I went back to the shop alone. I ran my hand along the length of the lathe. I put my ear to the casing and heard nothing but my own blood. I set my father's caliper on the bench like a token, and then took it back because some things you keep. On my way out, I saw my reflection in the shop window, older than I remember, less tired than last month. I stood there long enough to feel silly for standing there. Then I turned the light off. Money doesn't change people. It shows them. The man in the gray suit put a number on paper. My family put a number on me. I chose which one to live under. When I got home, I took Lydia's mug down and filled it with water and set it by the sink the way she used to do for flowers she hadn't cut yet. I opened the back door and let the night in. Somewhere on my street, a kid revved a dirt bike and a woman laughed like she'd remembered a joke too late. The world kept being the world. My life finally was mine. If anyone asks me what I did with the money, I'll tell them I bought something I couldn't afford for years. The right to stand up straight in my own house and to hand my keys to people who earned them with the weight of their days. And if they ask me what I lost, I'll say a few people who were never mine to keep. I went to bed. When sleep came, it wasn't the heavy kind that drags you under. It was the clean kind that comes after a long day when you put your tools back in the right drawers and turn off the light.